a 15-inch. Now, one of the things I learned working at a lumber mill is you measure twice, you cut once, right? You've all heard that before. And what they would have us do with the tape measures, instead of going by the 0 point, which I just did with the other thing, is go by the first increment. Because sometimes with the tape measure, the little catch on it would sort of deviate after a while. So if you line it up to the 1, and then you just this is where you have to just be conscious of, like, that you're adding 1 to the increment. So if I want to do 15, I'm going to mark 16 right here. All right. Same thing over here. I'm going to go to my 1. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and use this. Actually, no, I'm doing board. I'm going to do it this way. Not quite as exciting as emerald because you don't get to eat the board, huh? And that's the most important cut right there. Now, on this particular board, I've noticed that there really doesn't seem to be a huge difference in side. You want to make sure you get the side that's not scraped up. Okay, so this is probably the better side. And then I would take this, and I would do the same thing I just did outside, putting my tick marks down with either Post-its or pencil, putting down my first corner, my other corner, okay, and then laying it down. It just so happens we have one that's already finished here. Okay? So we'll put that over here when the food comes out, okay? All right, the other thing I wanted to show you today was rubber cement. Let me go grab the 2 pieces I have over here. Mounting adhesive, and there's appropriate times to use spray or rubber cement. You guys will be using rubber cement probably in your interval studies, and then next semester when you do your color studies, you'll also be using rubber cement. I love rubber cement, especially when a whole classroom's full of rubber cement. Get all the fumes going. Okay, I've got this piece right here. And what I recommend for you when you're doing rubber cement is to do what's called a wet-dry mount. And they usually, I think on the back of the can, explain that. Yeah, wet mounting. I call it wet-dry. Oh, combination wet-dry. And what you want to do with that, and I do say in the handout that you don't have to use the default brush. The problem with it, and you'll see by one of the pieces I'm going to pull out here, is that the hairs come out of it. There's one right there. Okay. And so if you want to use another brush from a paint store or from your paint set, that's fine. But if I know that my stuff's going down here and I've already kind of tick marked out where it's going to go, I'll just go in and very generously, usually more generously than this, just lay down a coat. Well over the spot that I need it, okay? Now, we're under the assumption here that this is not colored paper, because if it were colored paper, I wouldn't be using rubber cement. It works with white Bristol really well. It'll come up, it won't leave a stain behind. Especially this won't leave a stain behind. I can't say that about every brand. But then I would let that dry, okay? It dried. And so now I have this coat here. Now, it says, I think, here that you put the next coating on the thing, you're putting it down. But it doesn't really matter, so you could just simply, once it's dry, put a new coat down, and then in a very timely fashion, let's just say I was gluing Post-it notes that day, okay? Put down my Post-it note, and the cool thing is, this is where I like using rubber cement, is I can reposition it to where I feel comfortable, and then I can kind of brayer it down, and then let that dry, okay? It dried. Now I get to break out the funnest thing. And if you haven't done a pickup eraser before, I'm going to let you try this because it's better than group therapy. I've said that before in other classes, but it really is quite fun to use a rubber cement pickup eraser. Essentially what you do, and you want to make sure it's clean. Sometimes it's deceiving because it'll look dirty, and all I'd say is just test it out on a couple of things erasing, just to know if that's staining, goobage, or just something that you can live with, okay? I know that I've just been using this on rubber cement, so I think I'm okay. But I've done a wet-dry mount on these, and you can see the little hairs left behind by the brush. And I've been fairly generous for those of you that saw me doing this when you walked in, okay? And maybe the glare of the light will help in this respect, because if you can you guys see the sheen off of that? Okay, so what you want to do when you're using a pickup eraser is you want to use an oblique angle going away from the piece. If nothing else, go parallel to the piece. So if I want to get rid of this right here, okay, I would put my hand on the actual piece so it doesn't move. Don't worry, it'll come. It looks nasty, I know. And you kind of have to kind of work it in there. And you can get every little teeny piece out. And if you wake up the next morning and some is seeped out from underneath the thing, it's okay now. So as long as I'm going away. You don't want to go this way because you'll kink the piece. And I've seen so many people, that was my last color swatch, and they've kinked it because they went into the piece. It's like a dog. I'm talking, you really can get in there. Just keep on running it past. Okay? See the difference there? And so, as I was putting that down, I wasn't worried about the strange hairs right here, because I knew that would all come out. The thing you have to worry about with color studies, if there is, well, those color swatches, they stain when you use rubber cement. So when you're laying them down, you want to make sure you don't get too much excess around the edges because it might bleed into the inside. The algebra studies that you're going to be doing next semester, you'll have a square and you'll have a small square that you put in the center. And the way I handled that one, because it's hard to, you can't put a big old blob of rubber cement down, is I use a Q-tip, put enough down so I know I'm covering what I need, and then I'll wait for it to dry, and then I'll hit it again, so I'm doing a wet dry mount, and then I'll put down the piece, and there won't be excess shooting out. But I'll have enough down there with that wet dry mount that it'll stay down. And if you have to clean up, yeah, just be really gentle rubbing on those swatches because they're silk screen swatches and they can get damaged really easily. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
What's the difference between a wet dry mount and just a dry mount in terms of like?
It won't stick as well. It'll come off.
Okay.
Yeah, it sticks a lot better.
To itself.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like laying down an anchor for it to hold on to.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So the last thing I'm going to do has to do with food.